Hi, and welcome to another edition of NAIC Insights. I'm Bob Greene, your host, and my guest today is Martin H. Nesbitt, co-chairman and co-CEO of the Vistria Group. Welcome, Marty.
Hey, Bob, how you doing, man?
I'm good. I'm good. Thank you for joining me today. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
So, Marty, tell us about the Vistria Group and what you do there and kind of how it got started.
Ooh, man, that's a lot right there. Vistria is a middle market private equity firm. We invest at the intersection, we like to say, at the intersection of purpose and profit in three industries: healthcare, education, and financial services. Learning and knowledge services, as we've to broaden the platform there a little bit. Healthy, wealthy, and wise. Three industries that we say are lay the foundation for any growing, thriving economy. So we try to focus in places that make a difference in how we live.
Outstanding. So you all have had, by any measure, I'll use my own, you've had a lot of success. I know you're a humble guy, but you've had a lot of success. Firm has been around since 2013. You have 4 flagship funds under your belt now and a variety of other strategies. Talk to us a little bit about what it was like to raise that first fund.
Hell. Look, it was really hard, man. We had brought a group together that hadn't worked together before. Mm-hmm. Folks had success in some of their other endeavors, but you know how hard it is to tell that story that investors buy into, to give them comfort that there'll be stability in the group. So that was a challenge. It was a thesis that was novel. We sort of laid this narrative that at the intersection of purpose and profit, of public and private sector interest, there was a value proposition that wasn't really priced in the marketplace. We thought that if businesses not only serve communities, investors, employees, but also broader society, that they had to be worth more. Mm-hmm. That wasn't priced in the marketplace. So it was a novel thesis in a lot of regards. I think typically when investors heard that pitch, they thought about a compromise in returns. Mm-hmm. And our notion was that, there's alpha in that space. And we think we have a way to capture it. So that made it challenging. And then, when people see us, they think they're making a compromise or they're doing you a favor.
Right.
And that part of it was a challenge too. I remember saying to one early prospect who was asking us questions that were quite condescending. Yeah. I said, "Hey, man, look, you're not doing me a favor. I'm giving you an opportunity to make some money.
Right.
If you're not interested, just tell us you're not interested. It's all good.
Yeah.
But don't sit here having a conversation with me like you're trying to do me a favor. I'm going to provide a service which you'll pay for, which is going to deliver a return on your capital. Yeah. That's not interesting to you. I'm good."
Yeah.
So it was hard.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I like the pushback. Too often, and I've had the opportunity to sit on each side of the table, but I find too often people either talk to diverse managers as if they're new to business and new to investing, right, or they're talking to them as if they landed in from some other planet and have to be a superhero. And that's a hard delta to sort of stretch across. As you think about how you position yourself, you came at this with a lot of success. You had been very successful before founding the Vistria Group. And here you are trying to do something that is probably one of the most difficult things you can do in business. Talk a little bit about the psychology. What drove you to want to do this with your partner, Kip?
Well, I think at every sort of stage of my life, especially, coming from a lower middle class background in a community that had no diversity. You don't have a perspective of what's possible. First stage was I got bused from my neighborhood to a community with an all-white school. And I was a great student in a really bad school, right? Until I got bused. And it took me, maybe 30 days to calibrate until I decided, oh, wait. I'm just as smart as these kids. And then I competed on that level. And then I got asked by a counselor at that school if I wanted to compete for a scholarship to go to a private school. And so I entered that competition, if you will. And I came in second place. But as it turns out, the kid who came in first place, his parents made too much money for him to qualify. And so I got the scholarship. I went to a private school, again, another level up academically, different kind of cohort of kids. But, after a little while, I was like, wait a minute, I'm just as smart as these kids. And I just, competed on that level. And the same thing happened all the way through business school to my first job, and sitting in, some board meetings and seeing all these successful investors around. And then just at a certain point, realizing, wait a minute. If these folks can do this, I can do it too. And it was at that moment that I decided that I wanted to do something on my own, and just started thinking about, okay, what is that going to be? And I then stumbled across an opportunity.
So Marty, let's go back and unpack some of those early experiences that you talked about. I hear a theme of proving to yourself that you can compete, not being afraid to compete. But I also know that there's a hard work element, and there's sort of there's a courage element too. Talk about some of the early ingredients in your personality and in your experience that shaped you.
Yeah, I've always been, ultra competitive. I think as I reflect back, it's something, you're not really aware of until you get a little older. But I hate losing, Bob. Really, really hate losing. But the only thing I hate worse than losing is not competing.
Okay.
And I just love the idea of competition. I just love, I was an athlete. I love just the grind. I love sort of winning together with other people. That's just part of my nature, I think. And so, probably some of my friends would say it's an illness, right? Like, dude, everything is not a competition, but I like to compete at everything. And so that was clear very early on with, friends in the neighborhood, at school, then on the playing fields. I've always been ultra competitive. I remember when I first got to college, thinking I was going to be, a next level basketball player. In that first scrimmage, when I threw a pass through to the wing, and this kid ran through the passing lane so fast, stole the ball, dunked it at the other end, where it dawned on me, oh man, maybe I'm not playing basketball at the next level, right? And it was at that moment in college that I said, that I'm just going to compete at the highest level academically, and that, I think, set my path off, set me on this professional path to just try to do the best I could at every level, in the job, in the classroom, and then competitively as an entrepreneur.
So you go through undergrad, you work a little bit, you get into grad school. When did you lock in on this notion of entrepreneurship, right? Because as much as you're an investor, you can tell by your background, there's an entrepreneurial bent to what you do as well. When did that become the goal, and how did you prepare yourself?
I was at my first job was at General Motors out of undergrad. I worked in finance there, And I specifically went. There was a guy who was at my school who had done really well. All the professors in economics raved about this guy. He had gone to work at General Motors and got a GM fellowship. And they paid for him to go to business school at Harvard. When I heard about that, he was about 4 or 5 years older than me. When I heard about that, I was like, I want that, right? And so I really started focusing on that. General Motors didn't know that, but I showed up to the interview on campus, got the job, and the first thing I started was on the path, like, how do I get the GM fellowship? Mm-hmm. Turns out they were remodeling the offices on my first day of work. Okay. And I got there, the HR person came and said, we really don't have any place for you to sit because the space where you're going to be is under construction. So you have to sit in the office with the treasurer.
Wow.
And I said, okay. And I sat across the desk from the guy who was the treasurer of the company. And I didn't know anything about anything, right? It was my first job. I only knew I was going to be there when he got there in the morning. And I was going to still be sitting there when he went home at night. And he liked that and started teaching me stuff and started teaching me about finance and started sharing his work with me. Yeah. And I got a chance to help him directly. And that was kind of my first exposure, like, oh, I could be an executive, because I got to watch this guy, listen to his phone calls, everything, every day. It was a real blessing, and probably for 90 days. And then he came to me and said, you ought to think about being a GM fellow. Okay. I got the fellowship, went to business school at the University of Chicago, and then took a job. I met my wife, Anita. She was in medical school at USC while I was in business school. She had a year left after I finished, and she was like, I'm not moving to Detroit, right? So I took a job in Chicago at what is now JLL. It was LaSalle Partners at the time.
Yep.
And maybe call it luck. My desk was right outside of Bill Sanders' office, who was the entrepreneur who founded LaSalle Partners.
Okay.
And he had sold his interest in the firm to a Japanese insurance company, and was working on his next entrepreneurial adventure. And he was going in and out of the copy machine, covering up his papers and everything. And I was just asking, like, what are you working on? Right. And I'm working on my next idea. He was a cool guy, would tell you anything. Anyway, I was rumors around the office about how much money he had made building JLL. And I was like, you know what, I'm going to do that, right? And then I started listening to the guys. It's like, how smart are these guys? These guys are worth $200 million, and I'm worth $1.
Right.
They can't be 200 million times smarter than me, right? And I just started trying to measure how smart they really were. And once I figured, you know what, I could do this, then I started thinking about ideas, like thinking about things differently as they were crossing my desk, as I was getting exposed to stuff. I kept a little list that I had in my desk drawer. Every time I had an idea, I would write it down, and then I would go back and revisit it. And eventually I came across this airport parking idea that there was just enough opportunity, enough dysfunction in the industry that I thought I could go in and create value in a unique way. And so I left the firm. First, I shared the idea with the firm. It was a bad time to try to raise capital in real estate. Eventually crossed paths with the Pritzker family. And they said, hey, this is an interesting idea. Let's do it. And so I left JLL and partnered with the Pritzkers to build what is now the parking spot.
Marty, you have this interesting way when you tell your story that you're kind of walking down the path and these things happen to you. And I don't actually believe that, right? I mean, you gotta have this Midwestern way. I was sitting across from the treasurer. I happened to meet the Pritzkers. Talk a little bit more about the role that both hard work and good fortune have played.
Yeah, look, I do think that luck is where preparation meets opportunity.
Okay.
I think I have worked hard, but just I have the humility to know that luck is a part of it, right? I mean, come on, we all can think of people in our families, people in our neighborhoods who were charismatic, witty, smart, hardworking, that just never got a chance.
It's true.
Right? The community sort of brought them down, bad luck, just lack of exposure, limited view into sort of the field of opportunity, all those things. And so when I think about my old friends and my family members, I don't forget that, right? When I was in the 4th, 5th grade, there was about 8 of us boys that hung out together. We put our desk all together in the classroom, and we competed on everything. Who had the best handwriting, who could finish the math the fastest, who was the best basketball player. And it wasn't until we got older that the priority of like being good in school started to fall off for some of them as they moved through that system in the inner city. I only got lucky that my priorities didn't change because I got pushed to this bus to this other public school and then a scholarship to a private school. So luck is a big part of it. The other things, the intangibles, it's just you're not aware of them when you're younger, right? Of what your other attributes. And there were some things about myself that I wasn't even conscious of, but that until they were pointed out to me much, much later in life. I mean, in my 40s, right? Yeah. But I think I'm pretty optimistic. I really enjoy sort of collaborating with people and winning together, and I think that helps attract talented people. And I think I'm pretty selfless in my approach, in that I believe in this idea that it's not about me.
Yeah.
Right. And as soon as you think it's about you, like you put a limit on everything that you can accomplish. And so this idea that it's not, and that's probably what comes out when you hear me talk, is like I feel so lucky that I ran into the people that I ran into, that they became friends, that we worked together and accomplished a lot together. I feel just super fortunate in that regard.
So let's go down that lane, Marty. You and your partner, Kip, you are one of the few firms in our space. I see a lot of firms, but you're one of the few firms that I would say has been successful with a shared leadership model, right? Right down to the co-founder, the co-managing partner. Talk a little bit about how you and Kip came together and what you've recognized as complementary talents and skills that make it work so well.
Yeah, look, first of all, we were introduced by a mutual friend. And of course, you'll hear this common thread in my story, and that's basketball. But Kip played basketball at Northwestern. And one of my good friends, Craig Robinson, who I knew from high school through basketball, was an investment banker at Morgan Stanley, decided after 10 or 15 years, he didn't want to be a banker. He wanted to be back in basketball, where, he had a lot of success personally. He was the first 2-time Ivy League player of the year at Princeton. He well known as Michelle Obama's brother.
Sure.
Anyway, his first college coaching job was at Northwestern, and Kip was a player there. And he, after getting to know Kip pretty well, this was post Kip's playing days, he said, "You and Marty should really meet." And Kip was thinking about leaving private equity, where he had a bunch of success, to pursue something public service. His father and grandfather were both public servants. And he thought that was what he wanted to do, to sort of satisfy this urge for leadership. At the same time, I had bought my biggest competitor in a partnership with a private equity firm in the parking space. And then I had sold the business to a private equity firm. And I was thinking about my next episode, and I was sharing my observations about private equity with him. At the same time, he was thinking about public service, and I had obviously had a close friend who had gone through this whole public service career and reached the highest levels. And so he really wanted to get my insights. And then we had this whole dialogue about public service, private equity, dynamics in society. How do we solve these problems? It came out like a part of a 2-year conversation between me and Kip. And we developed this shared perspective on private equity. One, most of these firms were made up of Wall Street bankers, which is nothing wrong with that.
Yep.
Obviously, a lot of them have had a tremendous amount of success. But we thought, what if you had some entrepreneurial and operating experience embedded in your GP? Would that be differentiating? And the answer was yes. We also both made the observation that most private equity firms are pretty founder-centric. Mm-hmm. And as a result, they grow and splinter. And we thought to ourselves, well, what if we created a culture in our firm that wasn't about us, mm-hmm. that wasn't so founder-centric, but it was about us with a capital U? Would that be differentiating? Could we actually grow and attract talent? We both thought the answer to that was yes. And then as we talked about policy, I have been having a lot of conversations about public policy. Mm-hmm. And the conclusion I came to as an entrepreneur is like, look, taxpayer dollars can't solve all these problems. And the most powerful social force in the world is capitalism. And the notion of, could you leverage the forces of capitalism to solve some of these big problems? And if you couldn't you make a lot of money? Mm-hmm. We called it sort of jujitsu on capitalism. Mm-hmm. Like, how do we leverage all the positive attributes of capitalism? Quest for efficiency, innovation, good governance, growth. Use that against social problems where there were plenty to serve. Could we create a lot of value? And we thought the answer to that was yes. And so we did a deal together with friends and family where Kip went to be a CEO of a business that was in the financial service space, creating mortgage opportunity for folks. And we kind of leveraged that perspective. How do we make this business better for society? How do we use regulation to shore up the business, right, as a barrier to entry, as a differentiator? How do we leverage our insight on policy to create the right strategy? We went back and forth to DC, had some conversations that anybody could have had, but mm-hmm. got a good insight as to what was going to happen in the mortgage banking business. And we came back with a plan. We applied it. We grew that business by 10 times mm-hmm. in 2.5 years. And so we said, huddle up, I think we're onto something. And that idea became Vistria, which means the power of three, mm-hmm. investing with an entrepreneurial and operating perspective, financial and investment perspective, and a policy perspective, and using those three dimensions to create value.
That's powerful stuff, Marty. I've had an opportunity, I feel like I know you pretty well, but I've had an opportunity more recently to meet Kip, and some commonalities. You're both immediately likable people, right? You walk up, you shake hands, and you start immediately liking both of you. But I have to imagine that there are times when, as any partnership goes, when you don't agree. How does that work when you share so much within the firm? When you get to an important crossroads and Kip and Marty don't agree, what happens? Take me through how you all work through that.
Yeah, well, we try to be super transparent, and we try to set the example for our team that when you disagree, there's an opportunity, right? Somebody sees something differently. Maybe there's a better answer. One person's right, one person's wrong. Maybe a hybrid of perspectives is the right way to go. So we disagree publicly, right? We disagree in meetings. We'll state our opinion when it gets when there's a real serious disagreement. We keep arguing about it until we can laugh, right? And like not leaving the disagreement until it's funny is, I think, the right way to go. We respect each other.
Yeah.
And so when we disagree, we assume there's a validity to the other person's perspective and try to probe, why do you see it this way? And there's also the humility between the two of us to know that in a lot of circumstances, if I get engaged in a decision, I think about what are the odds that my involvement is going to create a better outcome. And when I come to the conclusion that what I'm going to add to this discussion is only incremental and not significantly incremental, I'm like, hey, you guys decide, right? And so I think it's sort of a real value to diversity of perspective that allows us to be a productive dynamic. We tell that to our teams. Like when we come into a big meeting and people disagree, we're like, let's stay right here, right? Let's stay in the middle of this disagreement and find out why there's a different set of perspectives. And there are some great stories around this. We have one of my favorite examples is a couple of the white men in our firm had this idea that they wanted to invest in a registered investment advisor, and that they were going to create all this value because they were going to bring in all these diverse managers, financial advisors, and grow the firm because people really wanted to have diverse people managing their money. And the black people in the room just started laughing, right? Like, we were like, dude, like the idea that white folks want black folks to manage their money is crazy, right? And they were like, we're shocked that you would say such a thing. How could you say that? We're like, dudes, come on, right? So anyway, it was this funny disagreement. But we said, look, let's stay here for a minute and talk about this. And, the black folks expressed their perspective. And then one of the white folks said, Marty, do you think Barack Obama would have gotten elected if white people didn't vote for him? And I said, well, obviously the math says no, right? He wouldn't have gotten elected. And he said, did the generation ahead of you, your mother, your mother-in-law, think that he had a chance to win? And I said, well, of course they didn't. They all thought he was certainly going to lose, but they supported him. And he said, well, is it possible then that white people might see this change coming before black people do? And the black folks looked at the room and said, all right, look, we'll support you on this, but don't lead with it, right? Don't lead with it as the primary value driver. We don't care if it's sort of a tertiary strategy, but have a plan A and a plan B before you do it. But I thought it was an interesting discussion and a real demonstration of the power of diversity if you're not afraid to go there, right? And I think by disagreeing in front of our colleagues and being as vigorous in our disagreement as we need to be, I think Kip and I have set the example for how to leverage the real power of diversity. And it doesn't have to be just racial diversity. It's diversity of perspective, experience, gender, whatever it is, right? There's a real value there. And that's a core part of what we think differentiates the firm.
Yeah, no, that's a great story and provides a lot of insight into both the bravery that exists within your firm, but also the vulnerability that exists within your firm. Right. Let me look at some of the numbers, Marty. 2013 vintage fund, 2017 vintage fund, 2020 vintage fund, 2021 vintage fund, all of them top quartile. I said it, you didn't say it. You don't have to get in trouble. I said it. But the pace, the funds have gotten larger and the pace of investing has quickened. Talk to me a little bit about the evolution of the Vistria Group, your ability to both raise capital now and deploy capital now, while still sticking to your knitting on achieving those returns.
Yeah, it's funny. There have certainly been some unintended consequences of that have been positive from the way we set up the firm, right? We had at our foundation entrepreneurs with operating experience and not just investors. And so we built a real infrastructure to do what we do, which is make investments. Invested in people and process and intellectual property to help us be efficient. We started out with this idea that we wanted to be able to put $1 billion and $1.5 billion at work. Of course, the market only let us invest 400 because first time fund, you never work together. People told us 400 was a really good outcome under those circumstances. But we had an infrastructure that allowed us to do more. And so we put 800.
Say more on the infrastructure, Marty. What was the infrastructure?
Well, for example, we started the firm day one, no money under management. We had 6 partners, 6 investment partners. Kip and I, obviously we had no revenue coming in, but Kip and I compensated everybody out of our own pockets. We invested in office space, and that set the tone for the kind of brand we were trying to build, which was probably way more than we should have spent on it. We spent a lot of time working on process, theme development, all the consultative expertise that we needed to get the data and everything to tell our story the way we needed to tell it. And we just kept pouring money into that beyond the level needed to invest a $400 million fund, right? We ended up investing $800 million with co-invest in that fund and put it to work pretty quickly. We did not then take the fees that were associated with our next fund, which was $872 million, to compensate ourselves. We raised the pay of some of our early partners. Kip and I still didn't take compensation. We poured all that back into the firm. We hired more, brought in more senior partners, right? Built out a operating capability for value creation within the firm. And it allowed us to get optimized results in fund one, but also accelerated the rate at which we were putting capital to work because we have more resources dedicated to it. And we got through that 870 pretty quickly and went out and raised $1 billion. And we took that and we invested in more people, more infrastructure, more capacity. And we put that. So we've always been, I think, a fund ahead in terms of people, infrastructure, process, discipline, IP, ahead of the existing fund, right? And so that our ability to put money to work has just accelerated and allowed us to get. We weren't thinking about it that way. We were following our entrepreneurial business building instincts. Didn't think about, oh man, this means the downside of this means we're going to be out raising capital every year, and that's actually what happened. Yeah. And so, but that's what happens when you bring that kind of combination of experience into building an investment business like this.
I want to bring together 2 experiences I've had, one with you and one with one of your partners. So must have been 3, maybe 4, but definitely 3 years ago. You and I had one of our conversations, catching up, and you told me something about the firm and your plans. You said, Bob, we're looking to add real estate, and I'm looking for the most talented person you can find, regardless of where they are and what they make. And you shared something with me that I'll allude to, hoping you'll say it. But you said, we've been planning to do this since our inception and have put things in place to make that possible. Last year, I had an interview with one of my partners, NAIC partners from Goldman Sachs, our champion at Goldman Sachs. And she gave one of the best interviews that I've done on this platform. She had her children's artwork behind her, powerful woman, from Goldman Sachs, children's artwork behind her. And she's just talking about the business and just being who she was. And then those two worlds came together. Can you finish the story?
Yeah, look, we hired Margaret Anadu from Goldman Sachs. I met Margaret, I think it was 2014 or 2015. And I had been in real estate for a long time. And this is a funny thing to me. When I met her, I was like, wait a minute. This woman is bad, right? She's super smart, super charismatic, quantitative, but has this qualitative ability, this high EQ. I said from that, when I met her, I said, you know what? It was like Neo from the Matrix, right? It was like she's the one, and she didn't know it, but I started working on it from that moment, and her career evolved at Goldman as I had anticipated it would. She was super successful. She shared the same values around impact, making a difference in the world through real estate, the way we thought about these other three industries that we focus on. And we were lucky enough to bring her on board this year. And so I think she left Goldman in January. She has 6 months garden leave. She's been working with us for a month now. She's done about 9 months worth of work. And I'm just super excited about it. When you think about real estate and particularly housing, it cuts across our other three industries in some pretty profound ways.
Yeah, give us an example.
Well, look, housing stability has a high correlation with educational achievement and health access and outcomes. There's also a huge financial services thread that runs through housing, obviously, with affordability, financeability, all these things. And so we think we're uniquely positioned to take a fresh perspective on this and bring some other insights. There's also opportunities in healthcare, real estate around healthcare that we think we can leverage because of our industry insights. And then there's a big real estate component to education too. And so Margaret's fine tuning, I don't want to share too much, but Margaret's fine tuning the way we're going to approach this. And when we're ready, we'll share that with the rest of the world. But I couldn't be more excited. The real validator to me, and I mentioned this early, Kip and I said from the very beginning, we wanted to create a firm that grows and attracts talent. And I think anybody who knows Margaret would probably attest to this. That's talent, right? That's real talent. And I was struck by her quote in her interview when we announced that she was coming to the firm. She said, Vistria was really the only option. Yeah. And so I'm just real excited about that. When she wrote kind of her perspective down and shared with me on the way she wanted to think about this, I was actually reading it on my phone. I was on an airplane. I was reading it. And I was thinking, like, when did I write this? I don't even really remember writing it, right? But we were just so aligned that what she wrote, I really felt like I wrote it.
Yeah.
And I have to keep reminding myself, no,
you didn't do that.
I didn't do it. I can't take credit for that. She wrote it. but
Well,
I would have written it.
well, you know what? That's powerful, and I think it's another testament to what you and Kip have built. There aren't a lot of firms that haven't celebrated their 10th anniversary that can pick off talent from career talent from places like Goldman Sachs. So kudos to you all. Wish you all and Margaret all the best, and excited to see great things coming from that. Marty, I want to shift to the experience that we all had over the last couple of years, the pandemic. And the pandemic affected all of us in a variety of ways. But how did it affect Vistria? What did you all have to do? And how has it changed your firm coming out of it?
Well, one of the things that is, I think, sort of a central part of our Vistria culture is this idea of transparency.
Mm-hmm.
I talked about the fact that Kip and I, when we disagree, we don't try to keep it a secret, right? We let people see us work through those issues, and that was the approach we took when the pandemic hit. Right? We didn't know what was going to happen. We didn't know how it was going to affect our portfolio companies. But we didn't want to keep any of that as it unfolded a secret to our LPs. Mm-hmm. And so one of the things that we did was immediately started having monthly, biweekly, and then monthly calls shortly thereafter, just telling our LPs everything that we knew, mm-hmm. right? Here's what's happening in revenues. Here's going on expenses. Here's happening in regulation. This is the dynamic in this business. Here's sort of the cash situation. Here's how we're trying to manage it. This is where we are with lenders, conversations we're having. And we were super duper transparent.
How did the LPs respond to that? I don't mean to cut you off, but did they attend every call? Did they grow into it? How did they adjust to that behavior?
They attended every call.
Okay.
It was packed. I mean, basically every LP with one or two people from each place was on the calls. Mm-hmm. I think some of our LPs, when they're new, they find us alarmingly transparent. Like, okay. Did they just tell us that? Did they just really tell us this? But we view our LPs as partners. And you can't help me if I don't tell you everything, right? We believe in diversity. We know that LPs have a different perspective sometime. And we think it's important for them to have enough information so they can share their perspectives. And so we did that. Now, the things we liked about our industries held up during the pandemic. I mean, these are really resilient industries. The education space became increasingly important. It was a time when people really focused on going back, advancing in their education, doing their education online. We had a lot of capital invested in online digital education. Obviously, healthcare was more important than ever. We had a spot in financial services that was a little rough, but other than that, held up really, really well. And so it turned out not to be as devastating to us because of the industries we're in as it was to others. And so I think we grew as a firm. Our effectiveness around communication with LPs was improved. The discipline that we imposed on our CEOs of our portfolio companies around having contingency plans, thinking through economic possibilities, how it might affect the firms, and getting those plans in place was much better. And I think we came out of it better as collaborators, both in the firm and at some of the portfolio companies. And so I think it was an opportunity. It was painful, but a real opportunity for growth of our firm and the way we conduct business and the way we create value.
That's outstanding. When you think about the healthcare sleeve, your healthcare vertical, what did you what did you come out of the pandemic thinking about? Is it a sector that you're going to do much more in? Are you going to, do different things in? But what did you learn about healthcare during the pandemic that will inure to the value of the Vistria Group?
Well, look, we are very theme-oriented investors, and so we have this whole infrastructure in place where we work with policy advisors, operating partners, former CEOs, about thinking where we want to be in these industries and why, right? And spending a lot of time, years, working through an investment thesis for a given set of opportunities. And so and those are sort of a long-term horizon as we think about those possibilities. And we're not going to waver from that. We're not changing our perspective on these opportunities. We continue to fine tune, get deeper knowledge, get more connected, develop more conviction around where we want to be and why. And that hasn't changed. That held up through the pandemic. It allowed us to put a lot of capital to work during the pandemic because we had real conviction around where we wanted to be and why. So I feel good about it. We're not chasing any other. There aren't any new things that we're chasing all just because of the pandemic. Just our resolve around where we've decided to be and why is firmer as a result.
So, not that you lack for things to do at the Vistria Group, but you spend a lot of time in the community. You spend a lot of time. You spend some time doing other things. Talk to us a little bit about the extracurriculars, the additional things that Marty Nesbitt is engaged in, the things that are important to him beyond the Vistria Group.
Yeah, look, these things are all interrelated to me, right? What I do is what I do. I really believe that we all have an obligation to try to make the world a better place. I'm super excited that we've, at least at Vistria, figured out a way to use another passion, sort of business, leveraging the dynamics of capitalism to do that in these three industries. But that's what I do with my other time. I mean, I am the chairman of the board of the Barack Obama Foundation, an organization whose focus is how do we accelerate the rate at which the world becomes a better place. It is true, although there have been ups and downs, that throughout history, we've managed as humankind to make the world a better place, more peace, more opportunity. It doesn't feel that way all the time, but there's kind of a positive arc here. And I think one of former president's thesis is, like, can we create a platform to accelerate that? Mm-hmm. Bring leaders from around the world together to train them how to effectuate change more efficiently so that every leader is not going through the same learning curve. There are ways to do this. Maybe we can teach the basics so that a broad group of leaders around the world can be more effective and make change happen faster. And we'll focus on that for a long time. So I believe in that. I believe that Barack and Michelle are the perfect two people in the world to lead that effort. They have lived their lives that way, dedicated their lives to that, and I think they're the perfect leaders for this effort. And so I've spent a lot of time helping them build this platform. And then, there are things in the arts. My wife and I do other things in the community, trying to figure out how do we have direct impact on families who, with just a little bit of help, can really change the trajectory of their families, right? Can we just give enough to a parent so she can send kids to summer camp so they're out of harm's way when everybody's out of school? So they can afford college or afford to go to a Catholic school or a private school. just enough. Those parents, and they're all over the place, right? We know these families in all of our communities the parents want to do these things for their children and just need a little more help. So my wife and I have been thinking through how we do that more broadly across our communities, and that's super rewarding.
So, Marty, I've had an opportunity to spend a lot of time in Chicago, some with our mutual friends at William Blair, who I know are big supporters of yours, and a lot of collaboration there. Obviously, Chicago brought us the Obamas and all that they've meant to so many of us. Is the Vistria Group another unique Chicago story? Does the Vistria Group happen in the way that it's happening in any other city? Is there anything about that Chicago magic that has been infused in the firm you've built?
Well, I will tell you, there are some things about Chicago, and I can't speak for other cities, but that I think are powerful culturally.
Mm-hmm.
One, and I don't think you can understate the importance of this. Chicago was founded by a brother,
Mm-hmm.
right?
For sure.
And that brother basically controlled what is basically downtown Chicago, Main and Main.
Mm-hmm.
And any sort of other business people, any kind of commercial activity had to come through him,
Mm-hmm.
right? As a result, I think culturally, the majority community in Chicago is quite comfortable dealing with African Americans, right? Yep. In a way, and understanding the potential, not imposing limits on them, bro. Also, I think probably one of the most well-known, successful African American entrepreneurs in history, John Johnson, is from Chicago. For sure. And he has been an inspiration to a lot of African American entrepreneurs, right? When I came to the University of Chicago, the thing I was thinking is, oh, man, I wonder if I ever get a chance to meet John Johnson, right?
Right.
And all of those entrepreneurs in that generation that were inspired by his success. And then there's the African American politician, right? Mm-hmm. Barack isn't the only African American senator to come from Chicago. Sure. Great African American mayors, all kinds of political success.
Emil Jones,
yeah. Carol Moseley Braun. So I think those ingredients there are there to create a real sense that anything is possible.
Mm-hmm. Heard that somewhere before.
Right. And this sort of optimism that we can do it. And importantly, because of those folks that came before us, always willing to help each other.
Yeah.
I mean, I can go down the list. John Johnson, Ed Gardner, who was Soft Sheen. When I was in business school, he would take me to Bulls games, give me his advice, for no reason except for it was like I was an ambitious young African American guy that he met and thought he liked. I don't have to tell you about John Rogers and John. Yep. What he will do, whatever he can do to help. Yep. Jim Reynolds, Melody Hobson,
Lowry.
Yep. Linda Johnson Rice.
Yep.
I have never any African American person in this community. They all have helped me.
Yeah, look, I mean, that's what I'm talking about, though. I mean, my earliest trips out were with Steve Rogers, right? Mm-hmm. Quentin Primo, just others in and around that network. And it's not a new thing, right? A lot of people discovered Chicago in, what I would call the Obama days, right? Mm-hmm. But it's been a city for diverse progress for a very long time. And I'm really glad to see that it incubated the Vistria Group. Let me give you a final word. What's your thoughts on the future? Where will we see you and in particular the firm move in the next decade of your existence?
Well, let me just use this opportunity to thank you, because what you and NAIC do is pretty powerful. And there's a whole constellation of successful firms, diverse firms in your universe. And so I think I think they all have promising futures, right? And there are a bunch of firms leading the way on that. I don't need to name them. You know who they are. And so I'm optimistic because I see you and these other firms growing and reaching new heights of possibilities. And so, look, I think that, and when people start sort of in 10 years or 15 years laying out the leading firms in this industry, that, you know, there's more than a handful of diverse firms in that space, right? We should be. There's real power in this diversity. And so I hope to achieve what I know is on the horizon for other members of NAIC, growth and success, and an expansion of our footprint, not only nationally, but maybe even internationally. I want to be like optimistic, and I want to be super ambitious. I think we owe it to our communities, we owe it to this country to reach that kind of success. We just have to keep making progress on this front. And again, look, this isn't about me. This is about us.
Yeah.
And I feel a real commitment to that. And I'm super grateful to you and your organization for doing what you do to facilitate that.
Well, Marty, I thank you for those kind words. I want to thank you for being so generous with your time. I also want to thank you for your example, right? I think there are a lot of people more than you know that are looking at you and they're saying, I want to do what he's done. I want to do it the way they've done it. And that's a credit to a person that, like you said, didn't have to go do Vistria to have had a very successful run. And then lastly, I want to thank you for your friendship. You and your firm have been there for me. You've enabled us to do a lot of things that we never thought we could do. And I just take this moment and this opportunity to say thank you.
Feelings mutual, man. Thank you.
Be well, my friend. Talk to you soon.
All right. I'll catch you later.
Yep. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.